In the quiet hills of Agwara village, there is a story people still refuse to tell after sunset. Because some stories are not meant to be spoken twice. An old woman sits near a fire and whispers, "A child was born," and death followed her like a shadow that never left. That child was Amara Madu. The night she was born, her mother died. 7 days later, her father collapsed and never woke up again. No one could explain it. No doctor had answers. But the village did. They always have answers. And their answer was simple. She is marked. Not on her face, not on her hands, but on her left leg. A dark, irregular birthmark that people believed carried misfortune. And from that day onward, Amara was not a child. She was a warning. My people, imagine being blamed for deaths you never caused, just because of a mark you were born with. This is not just a story about pain. It is a story about fear, hidden truths, and two broken people who changed each other's lives forever. Stay with me and subscribe to Voice Unseen TV, where every story leaves a lesson behind. Years passed. Amara grew but never truly lived. She learned early that people don't always shout fear. Sometimes they step away quietly. In Obinwa City, where she now lived with her stepmother, Amara Madu, Amara always wore long skirts, even in burning heat, not for fashion, not for modesty, but to hide what people called the death mark. At the market, sellers would whisper when she passed, "Don't let her stand near your stall too long. If something happens today, you'll know why." Amara stopped arguing years ago. She stopped explaining. She stopped hoping to be understood. Instead, she worked quietly at a small stall in Obinwa market. Arranging goods neatly like order could fix what life had broken. But inside her, something had already gone silent. Not her voice. Her belief that she belonged anywhere. At home, things were no better. Her stepmother, Amara Madu, did not start as a cruel woman. But fear changes people slowly, and poverty changes them faster. After Amara's father died, rumors spread. People stopped visiting. Business partners withdrew. Even neighbors avoided the house. And every whisper had one root. The child is the reason everything ended. Evelyn tried to ignore it at first. Then she tried to fight it. Then she started believing it. Her daughters, Lola and Nina, grew up inside that fear. They weren't naturally wicked. They were shaped by survival. "If people think she is cursed," Lola once said quietly, "then we are cursed by association." So they kept their distance. And slowly, Amara became something worse than hated. She avoided. Evelyn would assign her the hardest chores, not out of cruelty at first, but out of belief that keeping her busy kept the bad energy away. That is how superstition becomes structure, and structure becomes suffering. On the other side of Obinwa City, a new workshop appeared overnight. No celebration, no announcement, just a rusted sign, Kane Auto Repair. The man inside was known only as Darius. He was calm in a way that felt unnatural. He didn't talk much, he didn't smile easily, and he never stayed in one place too long after dark. But there was something odd about him. He fixed engines like someone who understood systems far beyond cars, like someone who once built things that moved nations. People assumed he was just another runaway, another broken man trying to survive. But Darius wasn't running from poverty. He was running from the truth. A truth tied to a corruption case that had erased lives, and almost erased him too. So he changed his name, changed his presence, and buried his past under grease and silence. It happened during a storm. A sudden downpour flooded the streets of Obinwa market. Water rose fast. People ran faster. Stalls were abandoned in seconds. And in the chaos, something strange happened. Amara stayed. not because she was brave, but because she had nothing left to fear losing. She tried lifting her goods as rain soaked her clothes, making everything heavier. People shouted as they passed, "Leave that place. If she stays there, something bad will happen." Then, someone stopped beside her, a man in oil-stained clothes. Darius. He didn't speak. He simply picked up the fallen crates and helped her move them to safety. For minutes, there was only rain, only movement, only silence shared between two people the world had already rejected. When it ended, Amara looked at him. "You didn't run," she said. Darius wiped water from his face. "I noticed you didn't either." That was all. No introduction, no names. But something had shifted. Days passed, then weeks. Darius returned often, not as a visitor, but as a presence. Amara didn't question him. He didn't question her. They worked near each other in silence that slowly became comfort. Sometimes he repaired broken tools at her stall. Sometimes she shared food without offering explanation. One evening, she said softly, "People say I bring death." Darius didn't look surprised. He only asked, "Do you believe them?" Amara hesitated. For the first time, she didn't answer immediately. That silence was already an answer. One night, strange vehicles passed through the street, slow, controlled, watching. Darius saw them, and his entire expression changed. That night, he locked his workshop twice. Amara noticed. "You've been different since those cars passed," she said. Darius paused, then finally spoke. "I wasn't always a mechanic." Amara looked at him carefully. "What were you?" A long silence. Then, "I was someone who exposed things powerful people wanted buried." He didn't explain more. But he didn't need to, because Amara understood something important in that moment. He wasn't safe. Neither of them were, just in different ways. At home, everything collapsed again. Evelyn had debts she could no longer hide. Pressure turned into panic. And panic always finds a target. That night, she dragged Amara outside in front of neighbors. "This girl has brought nothing but ruin since she was born," Evelyn shouted. Lola and Nina stood behind her, trembling, not from cruelty, but fear of association. Amara didn't fight back. She didn't cry. She just stood there in the rain again, like the world always placed her in storms she never created. That night, alone in her room, she opened her old notebook. For the first time in years, she didn't write anything. She only whispered, "Maybe they were right." Outside, Darius stood across the street, watching, not interfering, not saving her, just witnessing a breaking point that felt too familiar. The next morning, silence didn't last. Men arrived in suits, not the police, not citizens, something more organized. They asked questions no one in Obinwa City could answer, but they all led to one place: Kane Auto Repair. Darius watched them from a distance, and knew his borrowed time had ended. That evening, he told Amara, "You should stay away from me for a while." She frowned. "Why?" Darius looked at her longer than usual. "Because my past doesn't stay buried." Amara replied quietly, "Neither does mine." That was the moment something changed. Not romance, recognition. The rain had stopped that evening, but the street still smelled of wet earth and engine oil. Inside Darius's small workshop, the lights flickered softly as Amara helped arrange tools on a wooden shelf. For the first time in weeks, she looked calm, not happy, just less heavy. Darius was repairing an old generator when a loud thunder cracked outside. Amara flinched suddenly and lost balance. Her long skirt caught against a metal hook. Ree-pee. The fabric tore slightly near her ankle. Immediately, Amara panicked. She dropped to the ground, trying desperately to cover her left leg. Her breathing became uneven. No, no. Darius frowned in confusion. Then he saw it. The dark birthmark stretched across the side of her leg. Amara's eyes filled instantly with fear. Not fear of pain, fear of rejection, fear of seeing that look again. The look people always gave her. Disgust, pity, terror. She quickly pulled the torn fabric over the mark. "I'm sorry," she whispered shakily. "I didn't mean for you to see it." But Darius didn't react. He simply looked at her quietly, then smiled a little. "That?" Amara blinked. Darius leaned back against the table. "Amara, that's just a birthmark." She stared at him like she didn't understand the sentence. He continued casually. "A lot of people have them." She swallowed hard. "No, not like this." "Yes, like this," Darius replied calmly. "I knew a man with one on his neck. Another woman had one across her shoulder. My university roommate had one near his stomach." Amara stared at him silently. Years of fear suddenly crashing against one simple possibility. Maybe she was not cursed. Darius picked up a cloth and wiped his hands. "Human bodies are strange," he said softly. "Marks happen. Skin changes. None of it means death follows you." Amara's lips parted slightly. For the first time in her life, someone sounded completely certain. Not careful, not pretending. Certain. Her voice became smaller. "You really know people like that?" Darius nodded. "Many." Something inside her loosened painfully, like chains rusting apart. She looked down at her leg again. Not with shame this time, with confusion. And maybe hope. 3 nights later, everything changed. Amara woke up around midnight after hearing shouting outside Evelyn's room. At first she ignored it, but then she heard crying. Real crying, not anger, not an insult, pain. She stepped quietly toward the half-open door. Inside, Evelyn sat on the floor surrounded by old documents, hospital papers, and unpaid debt notices. Lola and Nina stood nearby in silence. And for the first time in Amara's life, her stepmother looked broken. Not cruel, broken. Evelyn didn't notice Amara standing there. She was too busy crying into her hands. "I should have told her long ago," she whispered. Lola spoke softly. "Mama." But Evelyn shook her head violently. "No, we blamed that child for years. Years." Amara froze. Her heartbeat slowed. Then Evelyn pulled out an old medical file with trembling hands. It was never her fault. Silence filled the room. Heavy silence. The kind that changes lives. Evelyn's voice cracked apart. Her father was drowning in debt before her mother died. He borrowed money from dangerous people trying to save the family business. Lola's eyes widened. Evelyn continued crying. Her mother found out while pregnant. She worried every single day, every single night. The stress destroyed her health slowly. Amara felt her knees weaken. The room suddenly felt too small. Evelyn looked at the medical papers. After she died during childbirth, her father blamed himself. A painful silence followed. He stopped sleeping. His blood pressure became uncontrollable. The guilt ate him alive. Evelyn covered her face. He died 7 days later because his heart couldn't take it anymore. Amara couldn't breathe properly anymore. All those years, all those whispers, all those prayers people made against her, built on a lie. A cruel lie born from fear and gossip. And then Evelyn whispered the sentence that shattered everything completely. "We were too weak to face the truth, so we buried it inside that child." Amara stepped backward slowly. The floor beneath her suddenly felt unfamiliar, like she had been living inside someone else's nightmare. Outside, thunder rumbled softly again, and across the street, under the dim yellow light of his workshop, Darius stood watching the house quietly. as if he already knew the storm had finally broken. Amara did not sleep that night. How could she? Everything she believed about herself had collapsed in a single moment. The curse, the whispers, the fear in people's eyes, all of it had been built on grief, debt, guilt, and cowardice. Not evil spirits, not darkness, not her. She sat outside just before dawn, wrapped in silence, while a cold wind moved through the empty compound. For the first time in years, she uncovered her left leg completely and stared at the birthmark openly. No fear, just questions. Then slowly, tears rolled down her face. Not because she was hurt, but because she realized something painful. She had spent her entire life apologizing for tragedies she never caused. A soft voice came from behind her. "You finally stopped hiding it." Amara turned. Darius stood there holding 2 cups of hot tea. She quickly wiped her tears, but Darius had already seen them. He sat beside her quietly and handed her 1 cup. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Amara whispered, "They lied to me my whole life." Darius looked ahead calmly. Sometimes people create monsters when the truth is too painful to carry. Amara's fingers tightened around the cup. "I hated myself for something I didn't even understand." Darius turned toward her. "But you survived it." His voice was soft, certain, real. "And somehow, after all of that, you still remained kind." That sentence broke the final wall inside her. Amara lowered her head and cried openly for the first time since childhood. Not silent tears, not hidden pain, real crying. Years of shame leaving her body all at once. And Darius stayed there beside her through all of it, not trying to stop her, not trying to rescue her, just staying. A week later, Obinwa City exploded with rumors. The quiet mechanic at the roadside workshop was suddenly everywhere on television screens. People gathered around electronics shops in shock. Former forensic engineer Darius Kane resurfaces after years in hiding. Corporate corruption case reopened. Witness protection allegations revealed. Nobody could believe it. The mechanic they mocked was a man powerful people once tried to silence. Evelyn nearly dropped her plate when she saw his face on TV. Lola covered her mouth in disbelief. Nina whispered, "That's him?" But Amara wasn't shocked anymore. Deep down, she had always known Darius carried a life too heavy for ordinary silence. That evening, black vehicles arrived outside the workshop again. Only this time, Darius didn't hide. Men in suits stepped out respectfully. No threats, no fear. One of them said, "Sir, it's time." Darius nodded once, then turned toward Amara. The evening wind moved softly between them. "I have to go back," he said. Amara looked at him quietly. "To your old life?" Darius smiled faintly. "No." A pause. "To the life they tried to take from me." That same night, something unexpected happened. Evelyn knocked on Amara's door, not yelling, not commanding, knocking. Amara opened slowly and froze. Evelyn's eyes were swollen from crying. For several seconds, neither woman spoke. Then Evelyn finally whispered, "I failed you." Amara stayed silent. Evelyn's voice trembled badly now. "I was angry at life, angry at your father, angry at poverty. But instead of facing the truth, I placed all that anger on a child." Tears rolled down her face. "You were innocent." Amara looked at her for a long time. Years of pain standing between them. Then she asked softly, "Why didn't you tell me?" Evelyn broke completely. "Because after repeating the lie for so many years, I became ashamed of the truth." Silence. Heavy silence. Then Amara did something nobody expected. She stepped forward and hugged her. Evelyn burst into tears instantly, not because she deserved forgiveness, but because she never expected it. Weeks later, life in Obinwa City slowly changed. People still whispered when Amara passed, but now the whispers sounded different. That's the girl from the television story. The mechanic chose her. No, not a mechanic. The engineer. But Amara no longer lowered her head. For the first time in her life, she walked normally, no hiding, no shrinking herself, no apologizing for existing. One evening, she visited Darius at the newly rebuilt workshop. Not the giant corporate offices, not the luxury buildings, the workshop, because that place held the version of them that healed first. Darius looked up as she entered, then noticed something immediately. Her long skirt stopped just below her knees. The birthmark on her left leg was visible, openly visible. Darius smiled softly. Amara sat beside him. "You know," she said quietly, "all these years, I thought that mark meant death followed me." Darius looked at her calmly. "And now?" Amara stared toward the sunset outside the workshop, then finally smiled. "I think it was just proof that I survived." Darius said nothing, because some moments become too meaningful for words. And as the evening sun covered Obinwa City in gold, the girl once called cursed finally understood something powerful. She was never born to carry death. She was born to outlive fear. And in Obinwa City, people still tell stories about the girl marked by tragedy and the mechanic who was never truly lost. But the truth is far simpler than the rumors ever were. Two broken people met in the middle of fear and reminded each other how to live again. Thank you for watching. And don't forget to subscribe, like and share my channel Voice Unseen TV.